On demand, and I just wanted to welcome you to this session of e-commerce for newbies. Basically, what we're going to try and do today is talk a little bit about what arbitrage is all about. Now, customarily, people talk about buying low and selling high in the real estate world and about stocks and bonds and so forth. But in e-commerce, when we're talking about arbitrage, we're speaking of selling it first and then buying it second. So we're going to try and give you some idea about what that entails, and we're going to bring up our screen share here and explain a little bit about what arbitrage is in the e-commerce world. So here's what happens when e-commerce happens. First of all, some definitions. Arbitrage is from Wikipedia, in simple terms, the possibility of a risk-free profit after transaction costs. For instance, an arbitrage is present when there is the opportunity to instantaneously buy low and sell high. Practically speaking, instantaneous is probably simplistic when it comes to the research needed to produce a situation where it profits on arbitrage. Examples of this are not researching carefully, and there are three ways that this easily happens. For example, not having a high enough price to cover the spread of your fees on PayPal, your fees on Amazon or eBay or both, your fees for taxes, and of course that most important thing, profit. So profit can be looked at as a fee in terms of figuring out exactly how much your product needs to have in the spread. The other reason your research may be inadequate is that you're not having enough stock at your supplier. If you find a really great deal, it may just be that the supplier is trying to get rid of it, and in fact there are probably tens if not hundreds of different people using that supplier for their inventory. So if there's only one or two items, you can pretty much be sure that the item is going to be out of stock soon. So keep an eye on it, either manually or pick a supplier who does not say one or two in stock or some low number that makes it difficult for you to access that super low price. The third and final thing is not finding out if your item is worth selling. For example, if you're only going to profit $1, it's not really worth your while in most instances. There are some instances where that's important, and that would most likely be when you're first learning. So not having a high enough price to cover the spread. Examples, there are sales tools to help you figure out the amount that you must minimally price your item at in order to sell. I'm going to try and make this come up so we can take a look at it. All right, here is the sales calc item, and what it has here are different things that you want to calculate: PayPal, eBay, Amazon, Etsy if that's your store, Bonanza, and so forth. So that's certainly one of the things that would be helpful for you to figure that out. Another one is called RoboCalc, and that looks like it's not available. So we'll play with that at another time. Let's take a look at what can happen from an example from a recent sale I did on Amazon. So let's see here. We're going to have to go and find it. So I'm going to type in pulse oximeter, and we'll take a look in health and personal care. This should be pretty easy to find because it was pink if I remember correctly. There it is. All right, and what they're telling me is that I had previously purchased it. I purchased it to sell it on eBay, and the price I'm selling it for here is $19.95. But if it'll show it to me, that was not the price that I used when I bought it the last time. So I raised the price in order to make the spread favorable to me. And so I'm sorry this example didn't show real well, but I'll get better, trust me. And I'll be able to show you that at a later date on other products. But you've got to have a high enough price to cover your spread. Again, does your supplier have enough stock? You should look for these letters. QOH stands for quantity on hand. And if your supplier does not have significant quantity on hand, you're going to get caught with selling a product and not being able to fulfill the order. There may not be a lot of different places. For example, I recently got caught on a item that I had sourced from China, and it got here and was the wrong item. Long story short, I tried to find it on Amazon, and there was no one. I mean, nobody had that product left on Amazon. So we had to return the money, and he's returning the item. He's returning it to me rather than back to China. It's just too much of a hassle to do that, and I always wanted that camera anyway. Anyhow, do you have it was a learning experience. Do you have a backup source to get your item from? This is another good example of not having a backup source. The backup on Amazon was way out of line in terms of price for what I wanted to supply. So that was really not a backup. It was a source, but it was not a backup at the price that I wanted to sell it. What else can you do? Well, among the other things that I'm suggesting, you can just close your listing and wait until you find a source again. There is a mini washer dryer that comes from China and is not available anywhere. Sears carried it for a while. Amazon had it. eBay had it. A couple of different places had it. And every one of those backup sources were out of it. So the solution would be order it from China. However, I really didn't want to order a container full of product. So that's just something I'm going to have to wait until it shows up again. So I closed the listing, and I'll check on it again in a week or two. Thirdly, is it worth your time? It's important to decide what phase of this activity you are in. Are you just learning? And this is the one case that I think it's certainly all right to have $1 profit. It's better than $1 loss, but nonetheless, you're not going to pay your mortgage with $1 profit unless you sell a whole lot of stuff. So while you're learning how to do this, making $1 after all the fees are paid is great. But once you get it, once you know how to do it, on the ALC, there's a spot in your listings where you can increase the listing price to take into account your fees, your Infinity, your eBay, your PayPal, your Amazon, and throw in some profit for good measure. So make sure you do that. I like somewhere between 12 and 15%. I may start inching that up higher as the higher ticket items tend to allow that. They aren't so sensitive to $1 or $2 price changes. Also, is it worth your time? Are you going to get risk adverse? Meaning, are you going to get stressed out when, you know, you're not making a lot of money at this? You're thinking, oh boy, I'm spending these fees and I'm really not making any money. It's a learning experience. You didn't finish college in the first week, first month, and expect that you're going to make the kind of income following graduation 4 years later. Fortunately, we don't have to wait 4 years for that. Thirdly, is it worth your time? And it can be if you can afford to list higher ticket items. And so I'm finding personally that higher ticket items allow for more profit on a single item, more dollar profit on a single item. So when you start thinking about listing products either that you find in your retail travels to stores that have clearance racks and out of stocks and or clearance racks, things like that, then you're going to find that you can afford to list higher ticket items. The other thing I think is pretty significant is how good you get at doing this. Can you list items fast in a 24-hour period? If you're taking half a day to list one product, two products in 24 hours is not going to cut it either. So you have to get in touch with someone for some help. I'm certainly available, and certainly the person who brought you into this business is more than willing to help you learn how to list a little bit faster. The ALC, I think, is critical to learning how to do this in a efficient way. What and when should you ramp up your sales? One of the indications or indicators that I recommend is keeping a record of how many sales you are closing in a day or closing in a week. This should be constantly going up. I would like to see at least one sale a day after a month, or maybe at the most 2 months in the business. I love hearing that eBay cash register ring, cha-ching, and telling me that I've had a sale, or sometimes it's that someone has a question. The other indications are ramping up when you realize how long it takes you to do this manually. When if you use the Infinii software and platform, you'll find that it's really very efficient. You can list on eBay, Amazon, and Bonanza using the ALC. Secondly, it's really important when you're looking for sources to be able to find your product by right-clicking on your Google browser the image that you're looking at and want to find somewhere else. And finding the image on Google is a really important way to locate your items. Lastly, I found that in order to do that, you really have to, I think, be able to use Google Chrome. My Safari browser is not very good at looking for Google images. In fact, it's terrible for that. Google and don't get along, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So be able to use Google Chrome for your sourcing from different manufacturers, different wholesalers, in order to get your products at a less expensive source. So that's pretty much it for e-commerce arbitrage. Let me stop the screen share here. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them down below. We'll be looking forward to speaking with you soon on another edition of Dr. Don on Demand, e-commerce for newbies. Have a good day.